Hello and welcome to an interview with. And today I've got a really good friend of mine who lives in Ireland, but we won't hold that against him as I live in the UK and the mainland. It's Tony Moroney. And we're going to get straight into this because it's about an interview about the book, basically. And the book we're talking about is Everything You Should Have Learned at School But Didn't. So, Tony, what made you contribute to the book?
Well, first of all, Neville, you asked me to, and anything you asked me to do generally is a good idea. But no, when you spoke to me about it and said, look, you had this idea in terms of, young people out there looking for somewhere they can go to get information, that really resonated with me. Because look, when we're very young, we're dependent on our parents. But when we hit our teenage years, we start striking out for our own independence. And we don't necessarily want to go ask our parents for, how do I do this? Or what should I do by way of career? Because we're trying to be independent. But actually, when I was growing up, there was nowhere you could go. And there was nowhere where you could really find information because, we had school and we had home and we didn't have much more because there was no internet. There was no, there was newspapers, of course, but, it was very hard to get any information.
True, yeah. Yeah, so, we're of an age, aren't we, Tony? Where we didn't have Google, and even if we had Google, and we Google. So, for instance, I'm constantly Googling leadership. What's the changes in leadership, and I get millions of responses in a nanosecond.
Yeah,
but none of them have got my name on it, and I that's why I thought we need to do something, as you said, where do you go? You're not going to ask your parents. And in many respects, we're about to jump into your chapter. And many parents have no idea about what you're writing about because they grew up when you and I did, in last century.
Yes,
whereas
indeed.
Most youngsters today, as you most eloquently put it in your chapter, grew up in the digital age. They don't know anything else.
Yeah. Now, look, I remember describing, my childhood to my own children and about, there'd be no internet, there'd be no streaming of TV, that we had 2 or 3 stations. I think watching Top of the Pops or the wrestling on BBC was probably the highlight of the week. But, there was no real access. There was libraries, of course, but we could not get information. If we wanted to talk to someone, we had to go meet them. The mobile phone hadn't been invented, right? There was no such thing as games that you went online and played with your friends. Games were on the street, so you went out with a football or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
But now when I look at the kids, and I look at my own 2 kids, and by the way, their answer to me was, how did you survive? And that's because they grew up in this world where everything is at their fingertips, everything is digital, and they don't even think about it. It's just natural to them. Whereas you and I and people of our age, we've had to learn our relationship with digital and technologies. We had to learn what an iPhone was, because that came along in 2007, and you and I weren't born in 2007. So I remember my first mobile phone, Neville, and you probably had one too, was in my car back in the late 80s, and it was a big clunky analog thing that with wires coming out of the car, and you couldn't take it out of the car. The world we live in today is so different, and the opportunities that presents is just so immense. Because look, most businesses were born before the internet, and certainly most executives, particularly at board and senior level, were born before the internet. So we now have all these people that are going to come into the workforce and create businesses and work in businesses. And they don't even have to think about technology because it's just, how they live their life.
You're absolutely right. And I think many people don't realize the pace of change with what we've got. I constantly say there's more power in here than I had in 1984. And I had 3 PCs on my desk. Yeah. I had a Wang terminal. You'll remember Wang.
Yeah.
I had a Wang terminal, and I had an IBM XT on one side and an IBM AT on the other side. So I had grey and blue boxes, as we used to refer to them, back in the 80s.
My father bought us the Commodore 64 because he had the foresight to say, well, this technology thing seems to be catching on. So he bought us this Commodore 64. Now, it did little for my enthusiasm to get into or understand technology. It was so hard. Whereas now I look at it, you mentioned you showed the iPhone there. a 3-year-old can use the iPhone. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of technology. And if you've grown up in an environment where you're just doing this, right? I mean, like the kids nowadays, I mean, they do games, they understand how to orchestrate the games. And these are all key skills in terms of the future, because businesses are sitting there and they're saying, oh, the world has gone all very digital. What are we going to do? Right? And they're thinking of it as something they need to add on. Whereas actually, no, it's not about adding on. It's about just being. And this is where the generations coming through have all the advantage, because they are, and there's no sort of think about it. It's just there.
You're absolutely right. And I'm sure people that are watching this are now going to be chomping at the bit to read your chapter, because as I always refer to you in social media arenas, wherever I get the opportunity and I see you speaking or talking or putting some information out there, when you put passion and digital transformation together, you get Tony Moroney, because you're this practicing guy. You know, we see so many influences out there that frankly have never taken a screwdriver to a PC, and you're one of those guys that has taken a screwdriver to the PC and taken it apart and put it back together again. So you've grown up with the digital age, and in many respects, you and I have had to accept the change even before we've been ready for it in many respects.
Yeah, I mean, Neville, when I started my career, like, we didn't have laptops, we didn't have PowerPoint, we didn't have Word, we didn't have Excel, right? I remember, we had systems like VAX, which were so antiquated in terms of you wanted to try send a message to someone, right? You'd be quicker sending a pigeon, right? It was that type of world. And now when we think about it, like, it's just everything is instantaneous, and the power of the technology is now serving people, as opposed to something people are trying to struggle with. But having said that, right, you don't struggle with it if you're young, right? You do struggle with it. And look, you and I both have had to learn about technology. We've had to learn how to use an iPhone. We've had to learn how to use PowerPoint. We've had to learn how to use social media, all these things, right? Because they weren't there when we were growing up, right? All of these things, and you look at what I mean, I watch my guys and they're gaming with their friends online, whatever, and the speed at which they are moving the screen and doing things, and buying and selling players and whatnot. I mean, how they keep up with it is just, I don't know, but they do it, and it's just natural, and that is such a great skill. Now, look, in the book, I'm very clear, Neville, the future is not about just people who have tech skills. It's all about people who actually understand how to use tech and how to work with people and how to do teamwork and how to be creative and all those type of things. So there's loads of room for every type of person. But what they all have is an intuitive understanding of technology, right? They may not want to be a technologist. So we don't all need to write programs, right? But, once we understand what the technology can do, right, now it's around, well, how are we going to work with it? And how are we going to work with our people? And how are we going to do things? And how are we going to achieve objectives? Like, if we're setting out to do whatever it is, be it study or work or whatever, if we understand how all these things come together, well, isn't that a great place to be?
It is a great place to be. And you're absolutely right. We don't all need to be technicians. We don't all need to be program writers, developers. But what we do need to do is to use the technology. Yeah. And you make that clear, very clear in your chapter. And there's one thing I want you to pick up on, if you like. Yeah. And it's a throwaway smiley type arena. And as we are closing this end of this first interview, I want you to just recall why you said, "Oh, to be 14 again."
Oh, look, Neville, when I was 14, I hadn't got a clue. Life to me was, well, okay, I have to go to school, but I like playing rugby. I had no clue of the world, right? I mean, we were clueless in reality, because we just didn't have the access to the world. The world was what was around, your garden or the local park. That was the world, right? Whereas now the world is at everyone's fingertips. And if I was 14 again, I was thinking, wow, I understand the technology. I understand how to access the technology. I understand how to do so many things. and the opportunities that creates is just so immense. And those opportunities were not there for us. They just were not there because the world to us was a very small place with limited information. The world today is truly global, with all of the information available. And you can do anything you want anywhere in the world in real time. And you can talk to anyone you want in the world. You can do business with anyone in the world instantaneously with technology. So if I was 14 again, I think I might have ended up doing quite a range of different things, because the opportunities are just there now that were not there when we were growing up.
That, Tony, is a fantastic way to end. I hope people read your chapter, enjoy it, and actually ask you questions. Connect with you on LinkedIn. You're not a shy individual, as they've clearly seen on here, and that's who we've been putting in the book. We've been putting in the book people that are very happy to speak to you, to talk with you. Just recognise that these people are very busy, but we've always got time for young people. So, Tony, thanks very much for being my guest on An Interview With.
Thank you, Neville, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute. It was a real pleasure.
No, absolute pleasure for me too. So good luck with what you're doing next week, and watch out for the next episode. Take care.
Great, thank you. Bye now.